Hey guys, welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Wesley.
And I'm Tim. And today we've got a really cool Saturday showcase for you. We air these showcases every single day at 9 a.m. except for on Sundays when we air a podcast, the video component at 8 p.m. So make sure you get involved in the live chat. We got a great community there. Give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We know by our statistics, only 50% of y'all are subscribed to our YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed. We'd really appreciate it. Now, Acer circinatum, I mean, it's a cool plant. It's got that almost full moon style leaf.
Almost, yep.
You want to give most of the Acer circinatums some protection from the hot afternoon sun. But I mean, this plant's got a really cool history. I mean, when Matt and I first went to our very first Maple Society meeting, I believe it was in 2009, we did a post tour to Mount St. Helens. And we were riding with Dr. Susan Weigruff, who we recently did a podcast with. If you hadn't checked out that podcast, go check out that podcast. It's an interview with plant genius and maple breeder Susan Weigruff. She's amazing. She's a genius when it comes to plants. And we were walking around and seeing Acer circinatum out in the wild. And we'd see some out in full sun turning yellow, some turning red. She'd be like, okay, if you're wanting to look for ones that have more yellow color, you collect from the ones that have more yellow color. If you're wanting to have a better red fall color, collect from the ones that have better red fall color to look through the seedlings. I mean, things are just blowing my mind. But then I began to look into the history of Acer circinatum. And what I saw on Mount St. Helens was just patches of Acer circinatum growing in perfect fall color. And the thing that blew my mind is when I started reading where this plant originated, when it became known, when Western civilization learned about this. Now, the natives, I mean, it's hard to say that someone who wasn't a native found this plant, but when it was first recorded as Acer circinatum, this plant was located and identified on the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Wow.
And so when the Lewis and Clark expedition happened, Persh was the head botanist, and he actually took a leaf of Acer circinatum, put it on a piece of paper, and it became, hey, this is the plant. So when they're on the Lewis and Clark expedition, what I saw as they were coming in to that area in October would have been just like what I saw in that perfect fall color. So Acer circinatum's got a very specific place in my heart just because I experienced that, learned all about it. And a cool thing about Acer circinatum that most people don't realize is the rank of major in the Air Force, the Army, and the Marines looks just like an Acer circinatum leaf.
It does. Yes, it does.
And people don't put that together, but it's likely from something like that drawing that they had from Persh. So really cool native plant to the Pacific Northwest that is really unusual and really different. We're going to talk about some really cool cultivars today.
We are. And first up on that is Acer circinatum baby buttons. And what I like about baby buttons out of the circinatum group, this is the dwarf. This is the dwarf circinatum, so you're getting even a miniature leaf of that circinatum style leaf.
Yeah, it's one of the witch's broom selections that have been selected. Basically, a witch's broom is a dwarf mutation that happens on a lot of different styles of plants, and if you graft a witch's broom on certain styles of plants, it will be stable and be a dwarf version of that larger tree. And baby buttons is a selection that was a dwarf witch's broom on Acer circinatum that was found in the Pacific Northwest. It was introduced by Talon Buchholz. We did a whole interview with Talon Buchholz. I mean, that podcast was amazing. If you haven't seen that, go listen to that on your favorite podcast platform. If you're hadn't found us on your favorite podcast platform, type in the Mr. Maple Show, give us a 5-star rating and listen to some of those. We've got some really cool podcasts done and a lot of cool ones lined up. But this is a cool introduction by him that just has really tiny leaves on a witch's broom.
Yeah.
And there's a few other witch's broom selections. There's W.B. Hoyt. I mean, that's a witch's broom that was found at the Hoyt Arboretum. And Matt and I did a cool thing with that is we grafted not only the witch's broom from the original witch's broom, but we also grafted some of the mother tree.
Nice.
Because part of me wonders if the witch's broom mutation, the genetics, is in the plant of the mother tree, and then you get something that happens to it like a solar radiation or something else that then can cause it to witch's broom. And I wonder if you grafted the mother tree, if then it would witch's broom again later, and you'd have another witch's broom that would be very comparable to W.B. Hoyt. So that was something crazy that we tried, but there's some other cool witch's brooms that have been found in the Pacific Northwest on Acer circinatum. W.B. Hoyt is really cool, but Baby Buttons is probably the smallest and the smallest leafed.
Yeah. All right, up next, I know you said you really like this one. This is Acer circinatum Herbsfure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a plant. We've got one over at Maplewood Knoll Gardens.
And it's huge.
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
Fast grower growing in full sun. It's a selection from Germany. And I've been told that the name Herbsfure means fall leader. Like,
nice.
But if that was true, the name would have to be Herbstführer. And this is Herbstführer, which translates as autumn fire. And that's because this thing in the fall is just some electric colors of orange and red. I mean, this plant is electric, but to me, this is one of my favorite circinatums.
Yeah.
It's a circinatum ex palmatum. Some people list it as just a palmatum because, I mean, it has that circinatum style leaf, but besides that, I mean, you wouldn't notice much about it being circinatum. I mean, maybe a little bit of that stickiness. I know you talked about that sap on Acer circinatum before we were doing the video, how a lot of circinatums will have a little bit of sap to the branches, but this plant, it's a fast growing tree. It can handle a lot of heat, and it's got great fall color. And so it's something that's very unique.
A little bit underrated, really. A little bit underrated.
Yeah.
All right, so moving right along, up next we got Acer circinatum Sunny Sister.
Yeah, and that one gives you some good apricot colors.
Yes, I was about to say that's probably my favorite thing about this one is those apricots, because you don't really see a lot of the apricot colors, and this one does really good ones.
And then when it leaves out in the spring, it gives you that color, then it fades to yellow-green, then to a green. I mean, those apricot colors that keep coming across this plant, really unusual. Another selection by Talon Buchholz. He's up there in the Pacific Northwest, so it makes sense that he'd find some really cool plants in the Pacific Northwest. Really, really cool. I know that we'd heard of people thinking, hey, we're going to do something new and we're going to use Acer circinatum as rootstock. Some people in the Pacific Northwest have been doing that for a while. I don't recommend it. I mean, circinatum as the rootstock, the part you're grafting to, I mean, if you see this plant growing in the wild, you know that these things sucker everywhere. It's a shrub. But by getting one that's grafted onto a palmatum, you're not having that suckering issue that you would have if you grafted these to circinatum themselves.
Nice.
So that's just one thing to consider. You know, just like some of the native witch hazels, if you graft them to vernalis, they sucker everywhere. Vernalis is native, but it's better to graft it to a virginiana, a pure virginiana, so you don't have that suckering problem. Same with the circinatums. I wouldn't recommend grafting them to the Acer circinatums. But Sunny Sister, another amazing selection from Talon Buchholz, just giving you those good apricot colors on a plant that's going to get 6 to 8 foot in 10 years.
And this was a sister seedling of Sunglow, right?
Yeah. And that's where it gets the name of Sunny Sister, because it's the sister to the sunny trees, Sunglow.
Nice.
And definitely a really cool plant. I mean, so far we've got a really good vigorous grower, good fall color, a dwarf, and we've got a mid-sized one that gives you some orange color. So we're already starting to see a lot of diversity in Acer circinatum. I mean, this is a really cool plant.
It really is. And up next is honestly probably one of my favorite circinatums, and that's for its really deep purple color, and that's Burgundy Jewel.
Yeah, and Burgundy Jewel, and what do you like about Burgundy Jewel?
Yeah, I mean, the purple color that you get from Burgundy Jewel is unlike any that you're going to see in any other circinatum.
Yeah, and for us, it's probably the most purple red color of any full moon style leaf. And I just call it a full moon style leaf because it has that rounded appearance like the Shirosonums and the Japonicums, even though, it's got a more full moon leaf easily than a palmatum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's like the shortened nodes and everything. I mean, it falls right in line with that full moon leaf. Yeah.
And this plant, amazing though. I mean, it was a selection by Peacedale Nursery that found this, and this plant just is so unique and so different. That purple red color on this plant makes this stand out. And I mean, this is a very unique trait on a circinatum. Now, most of these circinatums, they're probably circinatum X's.
Yeah, for sure.
Likely crosses with palmatum, except for maybe baby buttons.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a witch's broom, which is that dwarf mutation. Now, on baby buttons, if you want to learn more about witch's brooms, go check out our video. We've got a full video on what is a witch's broom, and you can go check that out on the Mr. Maple Show. But this tree with the purple color, the burgundy jewel, I mean, it really is the jewel of the circinatums with that purple color.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what everybody wants with Acer circinatum, but with some really, really deep red color.
And up next is just like it solidifies the variety that actually comes through Acer circinatum, because this up next, Pacific Fire, this is the coral bark of circinatums.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that tree just gives you some really, really bright orange-red bark to it. The thing I like about this plant is I've seen a plant of circinatum Pacific Fire that's like 10, 12 feet tall, and it is orange-red all the way down to the base. I mean, that is spectacular for a coral bark.
Yeah, I mean, especially because sangukakus and stuff, I mean, you're going to eventually lose that, especially down at the base. You're going to lose that once it barks
3-year
off.
wood, 4-year wood, you start getting the grayer colors on it unless you keep cutting it. Pacific Fire, that's going to have that orange-red bark all the way down. Again, most of these circinatums, you want to give some protection from the hot afternoon sun, but Pacific Fire just puts on a show with that bark color.
Yeah.
And it's got that larger circinatum leaf, but the fall colors can range from yellow to orange to peach colors to reds. Really good fall color tree. And again, this plant has a very unique habit because it is an Acer circinatum, so you're going to get a lot of low growth with Acer circinatum Pacific Fire, which means you're going to have a lot of really good bark color on this selection.
Okay, and moving right along, last but not least, this is a really cool circinatum, and this is Acer circinatum Monroe, and this is probably the closest thing to the lace leaf of circinatums, right?
It is. It's one of the most lace leaf forms that's on the market of Acer circinatum. It was found as a wild collection by Dr. Monroe, where it gets the name of Monroe. And you say this is found in the wild, so it can't be a hybrid with palmatum, but you got to think about it. You're in Oregon, and every corner there's another large Japanese maple nursery that has a Japanese maple that could have possibly had pollen transported by a bee. So it very much could be a hybrid with a Matsumuri or a lace leaf Japanese maple.
Yeah.
And being that this is the most dissected leaf, this tree is very unique in its leaf shape.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what makes this tree stand out. It has a slightly more upright, kind of a bush kind of habit to it, which is very much like many of the Acer circinatums do in the wild. But that leaf shape gives this tree something a little bit extra special. The late Bob Farmer had a really nice specimen one of these in Maryland, and Matt and I got to go visit his place at Gristmill Landscaping. And I mean, this was a specimen of specimens of Acer circinatum. And Acer circinatum, if you give it some protection from the hot afternoon sun and you grow it in the ground, these can do well in many different climates if you give it that protection from the hot afternoon sun. I mean, I saw Pacific Fire doing well in Texas before and doing great grown in the ground. Monroe, I mean, I saw a large specimen of that in Maryland. A lot of these do fantastic in the Pacific Northwest. The Northeast, they do decent up there. In the South, you want to give them some protection from the hot afternoon sun. But the only one from this group that I would recommend that could grow well in full sun is that Herbsphere.
Yep.
I mean, that plant just takes off like a rocket and has been an amazing plant for us as a tree, which is amazing fall color. Showed a lot of vigor. Of this grouping, Wesley, what's your favorite one?
Honestly, just for the uniqueness of it in itself, I'd probably have to go with Monroe.
Yeah. It is pretty unique with that lace leaf style. For me, it's probably the Herbsphere.
Yeah.
And that's simply because we have such a good specimen here in Western North Carolina in full sun. We actually had to move the flagpole at my parents' house. I mean, it was, do we let the plant continue to grow or do we move the flagpole? We decided to move the flagpole because this plant was just so spectacular. And I mean, it just takes off.
Yeah.
And it makes a good specimen in the landscape, but that fall color on it is electric.
It is.
And definitely one of my favorite circinatum hybrids, but all of these are likely, except for the baby buttons, likely a hybrid of some sort.
Oh,
and then baby
sure.
buttons is a mutation that happened on the native Acer circinatum. And so many cool Acer circinatums out there. It seems like we're only at the tipping point. I know some plant breeders in Oregon, from Oregon State University, who are looking through more Acer circinatum selections. And we've got some of those in the works at MrMaple. Some really cool things the cutting edge stuff. And there's so much more that can be done with Acer circinatum.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just these right here that we've got on the table. I mean, the difference in these is I mean, as much as palmatum, really, as much as palmatum.
Yeah, I mean, coral bark, lace leaf, red color,
yeah,
orange color, like that apricot color. I mean, just really good fall color, good vigorous, good heat tolerance,
yeah.
and then a dwarf.
And then wooded dwarf, yeah.
I mean, that's a great assortment of trees. So we hope you've enjoyed watching this Saturday showcase on Acer circinatum. And we've got 6 different Acer circinatums on the table that are each uniquely different and stand out from the crowd. I hope you learned something a little bit about Acer circinatum, and maybe you'll find one of these cool Acer circinatums to add to your garden.
Yeah, yeah. Take care.
God bless.
Have a great day.